Hello. Today we're going to be talking about the Sun card. The Sun is the end of the trilogy of cards that we've been looking at, the Star, the Moon, and the Sun. But it's also the beginning of another trinity, the last one in the major arcana, which is the Sun, the Judgment card or Aeon, and the World or the Universe. So it's a focal point, a cross between this process of enlightenment that is what the Star, the Moon, and the Sun represent, and then the beginning of, just as it's the end of the process of enlightenment, it's the beginning of the flowering of enlightenment, which are the last three cards, which represent successive stages of enlightened awareness. So the traditional meaning of the Sun card, is success, good fortune. It's considered the great positive card of the major arcana. It's considered so lucky and so fortunate and so representative of good success that it's very hard for it ever to be really ill-dignified. And my feeling is that the real meaning of this in the sense of divination, the context of what it probably ought to be, is something closer to success that happens not because of good luck, but because of an understanding that creates a chain of events, an understanding that creates good fortune for you. But I would see it as a card of an enlightenment, a moment of realization, a great and fruitful realization. That out of the way, the essence of the Sun card is the state of enlightenment, which is a state of innocence. It's represented as a state of innocence. If you look at the card in the deck that we're using, you can see there that there's the sun. This is the spiritual sun up here, right? And below, it's shining its rays, dropping its grace upon a naked male and female figure. In this deck, they're presented as adult figures. In a lot of tarot decks, they're presented as children, because the essence of that, the nudity, the childlikeness, is supposed to be about innocence, about that kind of fresh, completely young, completely renewed, completely free of all of these pressures of the supposed constrictions of life, right? So it's this state of grace. And you can see in the card, you have the sun. In this deck, it's a very stylized kind of spiritual sun with the crown in it that is the alchemical sun. In other decks, you can just see like it has the face, or it might have some other symbol there. But the essence of it is that this isn't just the sun. It's not the normal sun, but it's the fully realized sun, alchemical gold. It's the sun and the moon that have now conjoined and have created the philosopher's stone, right? It's created the transformation. So it's raining down its rays, its benevolent rays upon the world. And you can see that there's even the dewdrops in this card. There's even the dewdrops that you see in the moon card before, that before were far away at the end of that path of the moon. And here they're close. They're right by them. They're coming directly upon that naked couple there. You also see the symbol of the dove there, which is of grace. In other decks, it's sometimes the rays of the sun, sometimes shown as ankhs or whatnot, coming down upon the pair. And you see the four elemental triangles, right, that are that are the earth, air, fire, and water. They're all in a state of balance. So the essence of this card is that all that is opposite is coming together. It's the union of opposites. Everything is connecting, and this is leading to this great cataclysmic, you could say, transformation, but cataclysmic in a good sense, that it's this moment of this brilliant, bright light of awakening that happens. You can see there's a wall in the background. And in most versions of the sun card, you'll see that there's some kind of a wall in the area there. And that wall is significant of the boundary of the individuality and what is beyond the individuality. So that, in a sense, it's all that's left of that tower that had crumbled down, that had seemed like such a disaster before. And now it's just a small wall that even a child could step over. The reason for that symbolism, which is connected to a number of different esoteric symbols and concepts, including the idea of the Garden of Eden that was surrounded by a wall, is that the sun card represents what you could call the arhat state, the first state of awakening, as opposed to the next two cards, which are the bodhisattva or the mahabuddha in the third case. So the sun card represents enlightenment. It represents that first stage of enlightenment, which is enlightenment that is now liberated from the personality, but still within the individuality. It's the personal enlightenment, the enlightenment of the individual. Enlightenment has come to the individual as a person. And so now they see that their personality was actually an illusion. It was a mask that they had on them that now they can take off, they can change it. It's a shadow now only of what was once a cage of consciousness, that tower that kept you trapped and that you thought for the longest time was supposed to be to keep you safe, but really it was keeping you prisoner, has now just become this wall that you can traverse easily back and forth. So this transcendental self of a human being retains the individuality. It even retains the personality if it wishes to. It can now interchange personalities as it wants to, understanding it to be a play of consciousness, as they say, a lila. And the individual core, the star that is within the being, remains. That star that is a part of the spiritual sky, a part of the sun. There is an understanding of being able to unite to the greater whole, which is what's represented in the later cards. But at this time, what this card represents is the enlightenment within the individual self. And this enlightenment is that union, the united being at every level of himself. These figures, the naked man or woman or the naked boy or girl, bounded by the four elements on every side, it's not that they're two different people. That's one person. It's the animus and anima, the male and the female, the yin and the yang, all within one being. It's the completely united person operating on all levels, on all those four dimensions of the elements, as a completely whole person. And this manifests in the form of what you could call an innocence. It doesn't necessarily mean that a person who's enlightened acts innocent, but it's an innocent in the sense of this freshness, that the whole world is new around you, because now you're living entirely in this moment, experiencing everything you experience in this moment, both in your thoughts, in your heart, in your body, and everything around you. In a few decks, this innocence is shown even with a figure of an old man. In the Osho Zen Tarot, for example, it's one of my favorite cards in that deck. It's an old Zen master playing with a cricket. And I think that sends an interesting message. It's important because it points out something that's important to note here, which is that this innocence is a childlike quality. It's not a childishness, but rather it's the innocence that comes out of the full maturity of the potential of a human being. So it's an enlightened innocence. It's a child, but a crowned and conquering child. there's a verse that some of you may know that it's in the Bible. St. Paul says it, where he says that when I was a child, I played and did childish things, but now that I'm a man, I put away these childish things, right? And I've always liked the response that the Christian writer c.s.Lewis said to that. I'm paraphrasing. He said something along the lines of, now that I'm a man, I put away childish things, including the fear of being seen as a child and the desire to act very grown up. And that's very much a phrase that captures the essence of the Son, the essence of enlightened innocence. The reason that a lot of Buddhas are sometimes jokers or tricksters, or why they're almost universally nonconformists, is that it is an innocence that has a maturity that goes beyond the childishness of most people. Children are innocent, they're childlike when they're very young, because that's their stage of development. At some point, though, you start getting those fears that C.S. Lewis talked about, the desire to act very grown up and the fear of being seen as childish. You don't want people to think that you're a baby, right? You don't want people to think that you're immature. You don't want to not fit in. You don't want to not look cool. You don't want to not be responsible. You know, you need to worry about presenting this persona, this visage, this image of a certain kind of maturity. But this is a substitute maturity. And it's not to say that you shouldn't act respectable or be responsible or seem mature or act intelligent. It's not a message of being childish, but that when a person is in that state of the moment, then they're in this condition where they can be true to their full self without this fear or any of those other fears that were that boundary, that tower, that tell you that, oh, you can't do this because, you know, what'll happen to you or what will people think. So it's the innocence that you are at play in the fields of God. You know, you're not concerned about the ultimate destiny. There are still problems, there's still things to do, but you have become connected to this divine force, that all of what that littleness that you were before seems as though it was gone. You know, you say the self dies or stops to exist when you're awakened. I wouldn't exactly say that. What I would say is that you go from being this pinprick to this vast space that makes that pinprick seem so small as to be irrelevant, and makes you understand that your attachment to that little spot, that little persona, is not actually a truth. It's a falsehood because of how intensely you identified with just that one little detail. In fact, now you're vast, and in that vastness, you can have some breathing space, you could say. So the Son is about expressing and experiencing that space of vastness, which manifests in a sense of innocence and in a sense of celebration of all of existence.